How are you?
Yeah, all good. Morning, Elizabeth. And is it Ilona?
Ilona.
Ilona. I've got to get that right.
Yeah, morning, everyone.
Hello. Hi there. We're just waiting for potentially a couple others to join us. So if you just bear with us a sec, we're kind of twiddling our thumbs slightly. Did you get the memo about bringing maybe an object that sums up what your social business idea is about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Cool. Good. Okay, so we've got another one joining us now.
Whilst we're waiting, if I just run through a quick couple of things to do with Zoom itself. I don't know how familiar you guys are with Zoom. If you want to go on a break, just shut your camera off and your mic on mute, and you can go away, do whatever you need to do, come back to us. If you leave the meeting, you may not be able to come back in because there's an automatic lockout on some of the meetings. So apart from that, we are recording it as well. So there will be a recording of it available later on if you want to go back to it and listen again. And also for people who couldn't attend today, that will be available for them. And that's about it, really. The objects and picture, as Martin said as well, we're going to do a reference point to that as well. So if you've got that ready, that would be great. And if you want to take a break to go and get it, shut your mic off, shut your camera off, and we'll see you in a second.
Excellent. Okay, we've got one more coming in. So Ben, can you let Katie in, please?
Yep.
How many are you expecting?
I think we've got one more who's potentially going to join us, although we did get an open office, so we shall see. Morning, Rachel. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, sorry, I was a couple of minutes late.
That's all right. No problem at all. And morning to you, Katie, as well.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining. My name's Martin. So I'm the entrepreneuriaid officer for the Social Business Wales New Start project. So I'm going to lead this session. It is going to be as interactive as we can make it. So I'm going to kind of move between having the presentation up and then taking it down so we can discuss, because as long as the presentation's up, I can't see any of the chat function, and it will just make it easier for us to talk. So I'm trying to kind of fit a lot into the hour, but a lot of the material then we're going to use, hopefully you can use then, because there's several tools in there around social enterprise. So shall we kick off just by, if you've got an object that kind of sums up what your idea is, just in a minute tell us who you are and then what your idea is. That would be great. And do we have a volunteer to go first, or should I pick on somebody? Don't be shy.
Well, I will if you want.
Great. I was going to pick on you anyway, Rachel, so thank you. So if we all go on mute, apart from Rachel for the moment, and then Rachel, tell us about your idea and tell us a little bit about you.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Rachel Jones. I'm a freelance training consultant, and I work with very small hospitality businesses based in Trowsfynydd in Snowdonia. So I work with little hotels, cafes, restaurants, lots of startups, lots of people who are coming into the industry for the first time. I've also got a holiday let myself, and I work a lot with accommodation providers. So we've been very very much affected by what's happened over the last few months. Most of my clients and my own business, we're so small, we've fallen through all the cracks of established support, etc. And we're now in a position where everybody's sort of opening very, very slowly and very, very cautiously. And I think a lot of these small businesses are having a very different experience from some of the large businesses and the corporates. Now, I've had an idea for years for a social enterprise, which is based on getting very small hospitality businesses working together and trying to train and develop the next generation of hospitality. Because most people in hospitality around here are doing something else as well. They're diversified farmers, they're people with other businesses, they're people with any number of side hustles to keep them going. But one thing that we do have in common is the fact that we are having these different experiences. You know, a lot of small businesses are very conflicted about reopening at the moment. So my idea has been to start a sort of almost like a hospitality academy, to get the next generation of local young people particularly ready for jobs in the hospitality industry, with the right kind of outlook and the right kind of entrepreneurial skills to make that work. I've worked in colleges in the past, and you know, no disrespect to the colleges, but around here, if anybody wants to do catering, they've got to go away to college. They're going to do a long course, which doesn't necessarily fit their needs, and the majority of them then never come back. But if we could do something a little bit more nimble and business focused right here, using a network of local hospitality providers to provide placement learning experiences, I think that could work. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now and hand over to somebody else.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rachel. Katie, can we come to you next, please?
Good morning. Hi. I work for Clockwise Offices, so I don't actually have an idea, but what I'm here to do is to find out what the community needs and what kind of support as a business we can offer. We do serviced offices all around the UK, but we're not just about renting an office space. We're about building the community, having our members become customers of each other's, and providing support to our members wherever they need it. So if they need somebody for a particular service, no matter what it is, they sort of come to us and we can say, actually, I know somebody that can do that for you, or I know somebody that can help you with that. So I'm sort of here coming from a different angle today to try and find out what kind of support new enterprises are looking for, and is there something that we can help with there?
Great, thank you, Katie. Ilona, can we come to you next, please?
I'm glad I'm not the only one, Katie, that is here without a bright new idea. I'm looking at it from a sort of volunteering perspective, and very much trying to find out what's already, you know, going on in your local area. So I work as a volunteer development officer for the Brecon Beacons National Park, and I'm looking to sort of move across to West Wales, and just it feels a bit like starting again on making your contacts. We have a lot of community projects within the national park that we support with this. It's Sustainable Development Fund. So it's just an interest to find out what goes on around your locality, really.
Great, thank you. And Elizabeth, can we come to you, please?
Right, just getting my photo up. Right. So just carrots. Organic, healthy food, fresh. So I think my problem is I've got a lot of ideas, but what I'm particularly interested in trying to get going, and I can see like a social enterprise or a kick would help me be able to hopefully get some funding for, is an idea. Over the last week or so, well, probably 6 weeks or so, I've been talking to a lot of different stakeholders about this idea, and everybody I talk to is really interested in it. So it seems like the funding side is going to be what will help it go through, and also, you know, becoming a kick. So it's around social prescribing real food out of GP surgeries. So it's essentially linking the healthcare system with food and farming system through social prescribing, and it would be helping. So you've got GPs then prescribing real food for, I want it to be focusing on patients with particular diet-related non-communicable diseases. We could start with type 2 diabetes in the outset, and so then so the prescription would then take the patient to either a farmer's market which would be supplied by farmers growing agroecological organic food. So you've got short supply chains, fresh seasonal food. So it should be ticking lots of boxes for sustainability, well, regeneration really, improving health outcomes, local economies, soil health, and reducing GP time and reducing the amount of medications that they prescribe. So that's sort of where I'm at. I've started, as I say, talking to different people, and the energy is there, which is really exciting. So, you know, whatever help I can get from everyone here today would be very much appreciated. So I'll stop there.
Unmute myself. Excellent. Thank you. It's really important to say that even if you haven't personally got an idea for a social business, you're part of that sort of ecosystem of interest and support, and actually making those kind of wider connections is really important, because it's kind of mutually beneficial for people who are starting up, but also, you know, finding the right kind of space to work in, connecting with volunteer organisers as well. So thank you for joining this session. So what I'm going to do now is I'll put the slides up and start working through them, and then I won't be able to see the chat at that point. Ben and Tom are going to keep an eye on me, because sometimes the internet drops out, and I may sound like a robot. I may sound like that anyway, but I'll try and avoid doing so. So yeah, if you guys kind of let me know if that's the case, and then we'll pause at certain points because I want to get the discussion going round again. Okay, let me just have a quick chat of the chat. Okay, that's cool. All right, bear with me a second. Okay, so we've established that's me, and I've got a beard. That's all very straightforward. The timing is slightly out, but I want to try and cover in this session. We'll think about a triple bottom line approach to business, and think about what social enterprise means and what's involved. And then we're trying to answer really 4 questions. You know, what's the problem that your idea is trying to address? What do you need to make that happen? How are you going to measure the impact of what you're doing? And then how are you going to make sure that you generate income to do so? You can probably see from the logos at the bottom, so Social Business Wales is part of the Wales Cooperative Centre. We are the kind of the equivalent of Business Wales, but for social businesses. We're funded by the European Regional Development Fund. When we get towards the end, we'll talk about the New Start project and how we're offering support to new social businesses. So that's roughly what we're going to cover. And here are my big 3 things for this session. So we're going to learn about social enterprise. We're going to learn about some tools that you can take away and use to apply to social enterprise, or to give you a better understanding of social enterprise. We're going to do some reflecting. A part of that reflecting is taking away certain ideas and questions, and not coming up with the answers in this session, but it's making use of them a bit further down the line. So I'm going to give you some really useful stuff, but it'll help you refine the businesses that we want to see. And then to connect as well. So to connect in this session, and then I'll mention we've got another session called Catch Up Cuppa next week that you're very welcome to join, and you can make further connections. So I ran a business for 5 years and worked, it was actually just a kind of a normal limited company, but worked in the social enterprise and charity sectors. And building that network of connections is absolutely critical to kind of any form of success. It's a good thing to think of at the start. What does success look like? And then we'll think through what is social enterprise. I guess something popped up then, didn't it, in the chat? So can Ben or Tom let me know if I need to do anything?
No, that's fine, Martin. Just general chat between everybody at the moment. So you carry on, and we'll monitor as best as we can.
All right.
All right.
Can I just ask a
Okay.
really quick question? Will we get
Brilliant.
a copy
Okay,
of the
so for that, what
slides?
success look like? Just yes, you will. Yeah. So all the resources that I'll kind of introduce you to, you can have copies of. Just make a note. Just jot down, what does success look like? So if you're at the start of the journey of starting a social enterprise, just jot down or think through, just in a kind of few sentences or paragraph, what would success look like for you? Or if you're not starting something, what does it look like in terms of your own role and how you can connect with the social enterprise sector? We'll start. Sorry, go on, Tom.
Oh, sorry, Martin. I thought we lost you for a minute.
No, I said a moment of reflection myself. That's all right. Okay, so some of the tools we're going to think about using we'll look at what social enterprises want to achieve from that long-term vantage point of the impact that they want to make, and therefore it's asking that question: what success looks like for an organization. Let's think through what social enterprise is. I want to approach it by thinking through a triple bottom line approach to business. I don't know if you've come across this before. It's not a particularly new idea, but triple bottom line refers to profit, people, and planet as being the three areas of impact for any business. And that getting these things right is what it means for a business then to be sustainable, not just sustainable financially, but sustainable in terms of its positive impact as well. So triple bottom line has been around since 1994. It's a consultant called John Elkington who came up with the idea. And it's about measuring the 3 Ps of profit, people, and planet, so that a business knows and tracks what it's doing over a longer period of time. And it isn't just focused on profit as an indicator of success. There are particular reasons why most businesses focus on the bottom line of profit, because you know if your business is a success or not by whether you get customers, investors. I mean, that's the way the market works. John Elkington's idea was to say, well, actually businesses need to do much more than that. They need to look at what impact they're making on the planet, and they need to be able to measure that, and what impact it's making on communities, and to measure that as well. So you don't have what we're used to of businesses that are, they're making plenty of money, but they're particularly bad for people, either because of working conditions or levels of pay or insecurity around contracts, or they're bad for the planet. So triple bottom line is a really good way, an ethical way, I think, to think about the impact that a business can make. And I'd say as well that actually this is naturally part of the DNA of a social business, to think about planet and people, and not just money. Most people who start a social business, they're not going into it as a way to generate, vast amount of money. They're doing it because they've got a social mission in what they want to accomplish. They want to do good for people, good for the planet, good for local communities. So this approach is a natural part of the DNA. I think it's a very simple and a very easy tool to take away and to use as a lens to think about your business. There's a couple of questions that I've got with that. Maybe we can just pop these in the chat for now. How should a social business be interested in what your ideas are, and what principles and practices can they adopt? So, how can you evidence commitment to people by running a social business compared to, say, if you're just running a private company? So yeah, feel free to jot these into the chat, and then I'll rely on Tom to feed the information through. I feel like having a minute's silence again. It's interesting that John Elkington initially, when he put this idea forward, 25 years later, he wrote an article that he thought businesses weren't taking it seriously as a proper measurement tool, and it should have a safety recall. But I think for social businesses, it's a natural fit. So, Tom, what have we got so far?
So we got 1, measuring and disseminating impact, social, economic, environment, and health. So how are you going to measure it, really, the impact of what you're achieving?
Yeah, it depends on the nature of the social business, the type of tools that are appropriate to do that. We'll come to one a bit later on in the session.
Sorry, Martin, I've got a little document here that I've created with one of my clients. If the guys would like to have a look at it, I can share it on the screen in relation to these 3 Ps. How would everybody feel about that? Yeah, thumbs up. I'm going to take that as a thumbs up. Sorry, Martin, I'm just going to ask to share screen.
All right, let me stop sharing a second.
Thank you very much. So if you have a look at this, it's just a little exercise, really, that one of the clients have done to put together the people, profit, and planet. Can everybody see my screen? Yeah. So you've got in with your, you know, people adopt the living wage for staff, utilise the strength of staff, planet, environmental policy adopted, an eco code, environmental champion, aim to promote fair trade product and local products with reduced carbon output. Many of the stuff which we've all discussed really within this meeting. If I can just scroll down, the computer's a bit slow. Funds reinvested into the business, aim to support economic and social regeneration of the areas, very much like Rachel touched on earlier. You know, diverse board in terms of people, Welsh speakers, male and female, Spanish speaker. So it's just identifying really what, as a business, where the people, planet and profit sits. All right, just thought I'd share that because I've got it on my screen now.
Great. Let me just pop these slides back up. Bear with me a second.
We've also got a couple from Rachel, profit reinvesting back in the business, people sharing profits with the workforce, involving people in teams decision making. So I'm assuming that's in terms of strategic at board level and delivery level as well. And, you know, planet, the circular economy approach, similar to what Elizabeth was discussing really with local produce and et cetera, et cetera.
Great, thank you. Just going to touch on what a social business is. It's worth bearing in mind social enterprise has no legal definition at all. And there are a number of different legal models that sit under the social business banner. But as a rule of thumb, a social business is going to make the world a better place. It's going to create value and impact that is social, cultural, and financial. And it's going to operate as a business that generates income to sustain itself. So choosing the right legal structure is something that, you know, needs to be carefully thought through. You have to think through what are the goals. And all social businesses have these characteristics that they're going to create value and impact. And that's going to be a clear social value. Typically, social businesses are described as not-for-profit. I think for lots of people, this is a kind of, it trips them up a little bit, because ultimately all businesses need to be for profit. You can't have a business that doesn't have the creation of profit as as part of how it's going to operate. And so I'd much rather use the phrase profit for good or profit for purpose rather than not for profit. The key issue is the use of profit rather than whether there's profit. There has to be profit, otherwise it's not a business, but it's what you're going to do with it that's the key thing. Tom, can you let me know what's in the chat?
Sorry, I'm muting my mic. No, we're just talking really generally. Martin, so you can carry on.
All right, thank you. So a social business is going to generate income by trading. It may be grant dependent on the early stage of setup, but it won't be grant dependent in the long term. Profit is not for personal or shareholder gain. There is one exception to that, but typically this is what holds social businesses together, is that the profit is not for shareholders. So we're not going to make fat cats fatter, but that profit is for purpose, and it'll either be reinvested into the business or reinvested into the community for good. And again, I talk on a lot of startup courses, and one of the things I have to stress is that you need to be able to earn a good living for yourself by working in this sector. We need the most talented, visionary people who are going to have incomes that are representative and fair for their talents and their efforts. So I don't want to send the message that we should be paid less in the social enterprise sector. I don't think it works like that. But it's this use of profit and not shareholder gain, but that profit for purpose, doing that. And then you'll find that the legal structures will serve those goals. So typically a social business will have an asset lock on anything that it owns. Here's a definition that came originally from the CBI, and it's been used both 11 years ago and now within Welsh Government understanding of social businesses. And I think this is really helpful. So a social business has primarily social objectives, and then surpluses are principally reinvested in the business or the community, rather than being driven by the need to maximize profit for shareholders and owners. So you can see, you're keeping the money in the community, you're keeping the money doing good. It's not that the money is going to be creamed off and it's leaving that community, or it's only making certain people wealthy. So those are the kind of characteristics of social business. And then this diagram kind of maps out both ends of the spectrum when it comes to legal structures. So no need to comment on this, but have a look at it. You can kind of position yourself as to where you are now, maybe where you want to be, and that sort of thing as well. So we've got, I think, helpfully, voluntary organisations at one end, and unincorporated groups, and at the other you've got private businesses. But yeah, it's good to think through where you are. Community interest companies were created in 2005 as a vehicle to allow a business to have both a kind of trading capacity and also clearly articulated social aims in what they're doing. B Corp, which is on the private sector side of the divide, they have no cap on assets, but a B Corp, started in America in 2006, is a private business that wants to have social clauses and social aims in its business and a way of actually being accountable and measuring those. But there's no restriction on the assets for that. So you would voluntarily go into choosing to have that form. You can't just say it, you have to be part of a movement that's going to give you an objective measurement score as to whether you fit as a values-driven business. But you would still be a private business owner and would benefit from the income of the business at the level of gaining shares from it. So I hope that's helpful. I'll send this on. I think it's just a good way to map out where everything sits. I want to come to the problem you're trying to solve. We heard a little bit about that from Rachel and from Elizabeth. I'm going to show you something developed by the Side Business School in Oxford. This is an open source resource, so you can have the slides from it, but I'm happy to send the link over as well so you can get the PDFs for yourself. And it's a tool to use at that sort of pre-startup stage before you're trading, to think through what I called earlier the problem or the challenge that you're trying to deal with, and what's happening on the ground with that, and then the sort of proposed solutions for dealing with it. And it's a really useful template. You can take an aerial view of it and work out, you know, once you look at what the problem is and what the solutions are, it's all those bits in between where maybe things aren't being addressed. And this was developed by a lecturer at Side Business School who was concerned that it's easy to get a social business up and running quickly without necessarily really kind of drilling down and doing the hard work on what the challenges are and where else, either in the UK or beyond, some of those issues are being addressed and challenged. If I show you the whole stack of questions to ask about the nature of the challenge that you're dealing with, but it's interesting in both the cases of the ideas that you've mentioned. There is, or you've presented in terms of that awareness of particular health or local issues and needs. So this isn't something we can work through and discuss now, but it's a great template. I'd really encourage you to take this away and use these questions to kind of guide your thinking through on this, and particularly where you can take learning from elsewhere, where things are already being addressed with similar ideas. I think it's really helpful just to kind of sharpen your thinking and enhance your idea. So yeah, I'm happy to send a link for the template, but you'll have these from the slides that I'll send as well. This is a bit more discussion. So the question is, what do you need? So if you're starting a social business, what resources do you need? What do you need for yourself? What might you need from other people? Rather than put this in the chat, I think it's a case of, unmute yourself and chip in with answers. Rachel, you look like you're thinking really hard.
I am. It's difficult to know where to start with this, to be honest. In most of my work, my resources are my knowledge and my experience, which is, which is one thing. But to get this off the ground, I need to think very differently. I don't know where to start. Could you give us some for instances?
Yeah, certainly. So it's interesting. So if you're bringing that knowledge and skill with you, do you need a sounding board? Do you need a mentor? Do you need a critical friend? Would be one thing. Do you need resources around marketing your idea? Do you need funding? I guess those would be some of the things.
Yes, I've been thinking about, I've already been mentally thinking about a sort of board of trustees or non-exec directors or somebody, and who I need in that team from the people that I know and the people that I trust around me already. So I've thought that through. But yes, funding to get it off the ground is going to be a big thing. I've got very limited resources that I can put in myself.
I think one of the hallmarks of good entrepreneurship is where you can see opportunities, but you don't have the resources, but you will engineer and find a way to bring those resources to bear on the problem. So I think not many of us have, start out with the resources that we need, but we've got the vision. We can see the opportunity.
Mm.
Yeah, so working out how to get all that together. Elizabeth, how about you? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, a mentor would be marvellous, if that was possible. As I say, help with starting up a kick, and then, being pointed in the direction of possible funding opportunities that I can apply for. It seems at the moment lots of funding is COVID focused, and like regular calls have just been put on hold, which is a little bit annoying, but there you go. Other things like links to health boards. There's people in charge of research and development or like innovation who might be receptive to my idea, and then practical things like you mentioned the marketing. Well, it would be setting up. I already do Twitter. I mean, that's sort of personal, not related to this idea. So just be becoming more familiar with like marketing, and then obviously a website if that's necessary at this point or whenever it is necessary.
So a really good exercise to do to map out the kind of full extent of these other resources you need. And when I've done this in other sessions, people sometimes talk about character as well. They talk about needing to be resilient. They know this is not going to be easy. Tapping into sort of guidance from business advisors and other areas of support. Ilona, anything you'd like to chip in and add on this from your perspective?
I mean, it is more difficult to think of it as an abstract because I haven't got a concrete sort of social business proposal. It's a bit more difficult to think of it in an abstract way. I mean, the things I wrote down was, first of all, you need to identify a need. You can have an idea, but you do need to sort of evidence that there will be a take-up of this idea if you do get it off the ground. Potentially, that's a step that sort of quite often gets overlooked because people think, oh, this is a brilliant idea, without sort of testing it fully. And then the second thing I did write down was, what resources do you need? So so I'm at least thinking on the right lines, and then to sort of formulate a plan as to how you get it up and running, with regards to, like was mentioned, marketing, etc., and the sort of structures in which this takes place.
Good, thank you. That's really helpful. Your perspective on it is, coming from a different angle, but it's really valuable to have that on the call. A number of social businesses will have volunteers involved in what they're doing, and then it's a question of, particularly if you're thinking then about training and about support that's out there. It's really helpful to have your perspective on that.
And I think specifically sort of social enterprises. I would imagine you'll have a small core of paid staff, but then you'd have a much larger group of sort of volunteer workers that can help, either because they buy into the idea. A lot of people want to give something back, whether they've benefited from that in the past themselves. But you can tap into reasons why people want to sort of help out your social enterprise. If you can tie it to the locality, I mean, there's lots of ways of making this an interesting prospect for people in an area.
Yeah.
And with regards to what Elizabeth said, you know, with funding currently being focused on sort of COVID recovery, I would think specifically your idea would not be that difficult to sort of put in that line. If you're talking about health and well-being, I mean, it's proven that people who've got a better health to start with, you know, would sort of fare better all round, really. So the whole focus on sort of food miles and sort of local involvement in healthy food. I mean, if you take it one step further with regards to, I know in our area there's a lot of interest currently in food, how it's generated, food miles, but also how people can get involved in growing it on a relatively small scale. For, you know, there's research being done as to how much land you need to supply, you know, a village or a community.
Absolutely. There'll actually be people we can connect you up with as well, in your kind of respective areas of interest. So I'm conscious of time, so let me move on to the next section about how to measure social impact. I just want to introduce a tool that I find really helpful in doing that. So that's the theory of change. Theory of change can either be used as an evidence tool at the start of the life of a project or a social business. And you know, this covers not just social businesses, but it would cover work in the voluntary sector as well. It can either be used as the start to evidence impact, or it can be used as a communication tool to demonstrate that impact has taken place. So I'm going to show you a chart that really helpfully lays out the movement of a theory of change. So we're back to that starting point of the problem that you're trying to solve, or the problem you're trying to address, and the context in which that happens. When I've used this previously, I've run these as sort of full day events, just looking at theory of change, and to really drill down and think through what the problem is, and then what the ultimate goal is. What's the desired state? How do you want to see the world once this problem has been addressed? And then what are the logical connections and movements between the problem and the activities that you're going to carry out, and the outputs and the outcomes? So the differential, you know, when you look at activities and outputs, let me give you a concrete example. Say, for example, the problem you're trying to address is the issue of employability for young adults with additional learning needs. And this is a challenge because for lots of young people in that situation, they get to the end of a period of education and there's a cliff edge, that there's no or very limited opportunities then to gain employment. So you have social businesses that are deliberately seeking to deal with that. And in terms of activity, you may create apprenticeship programs and training courses. Now, the outputs for that are the things that you can measure. So if you're running a training course and you've got 20 young people involved, or in a calendar year, you may have 120 young people involved, there are definite outputs that you can measure from that in terms of qualifications gained, courses completed, maybe even jobs gained as a result of it. But the key thing then is that issue of the outcome and the desired state. So what's the ultimate goal for those people? Is it to have safe and secure employability? Is it to have independency? Are there issues around confidence, involvement in the community? What would the world look like for that young person and their family when you reach that desired state? And then you're asking, well, will our activities and the things that we can measure, will they lead to those outcomes? So you could have an output where 30 young people have successfully attended a course, and you can kind of, that's a really good result. But what's the outcome? How many people went into a job that they could stay in as a result of that? or what if the job only lasts 3 months or 6 months? So this is a really useful tool that takes time to work through. There's a resource from New Philanthropy Capital that's a 10-step guide to putting together your theory of change that I'm very happy to share after the call. Funders we've noticed particularly like this approach. So we've noticed, especially with the lottery, that this has gained some real traction, because it's a way of presenting the impact that you're going to make as a social business beyond just what your activities are doing. For the sake of time, I can't go into more detail, but you'll have this as a sort of template, and I'm happy to send over a Word document version of it, and an additional resource. But I just encourage you to again, to use these tools to really plot out and map out what you're going to do. What you find with organizations is sometimes the impact that you think you're making is based on assumptions that may not really be there. So this is a way of testing those assumptions. And sometimes we can claim too much that our work is actually more transformational than it really is. So this is a way of actually aligning it with an evidence-based approach, and a way of testing whether that that really is the case. We come to the next section, which is how you're going to generate income to start and develop your social business. And this is where I'll need your input. So here's a quadrant of the 4, I guess, main ways in which a social business might generate its income. And you can think through this, from the starting point in year 1. So where is your income going to come from? But you can also use it to think through, well, maybe year 2, year 3, this will start to change. So where will the income come from then? And my question, and we'll do this as an open question, is to ask, well, what are the pros and cons of these different approaches? That's my non-rhetorical question. So for a social business, what are the pros and cons going on here?
I think sometimes for a social business, there's a mental barrier to trading for a profit. Going back to something you mentioned earlier, really.
Mental barrier that it's a bad thing, or it's not achievable.
Perhaps that it's not achievable, or perhaps that there are barriers around pricing and whether you should be seen to be pricing competitively or making a profit or whatever. It goes back to what you were saying about what was the phrase you used? Not for profit for purpose rather than not for profit.
Yeah, no, I get that totally. And I part of it is, if you think of social enterprise as itself an innovation, so it's combining the social mission that you would associate with charities with the commercial function that you would associate with business. And this innovative vehicle is going to be delivering both. Well, it depends whether you're coming to it from a commercial background or a social background as to where you feel comfortable with that and how you're going to approach it. Typically in the social business world, the social mission is the big thing. So developing that commercial mindset in a way that's going to operate fairly, it sometimes can be a challenge. Tom, you look like you're itching to say something.
Yeah, it's something which is really bugging me here, and I don't want it to come across in the wrong way, but I think very often with small-scale social enterprises, when they go for trading and commissioning, because this small scale, I think a lot of larger institutions expect them to do it on a lot less funding, and they expect the same major outcomes on a lot less funding, and very often I think that puts a lot of pressure on the social enterprise sector. Obviously overcoming that is tough and it's very difficult, but I think sometimes just having that pushback, as having the confidence actually as small scale social enterprises know that actually this is what we can achieve, this is our value, and this is the realistic costs. So you don't actually put your business, you don't jeopardize your business when you go in for trading and commissioning.
Thanks, Tom. Any other thoughts on maybe some pros and cons, or where at the moment you see yourself on this grid?
I think I'd be looking at a blend of two or three of those. It's going to be getting the blend right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's crucial, because having more than one income stream is it's not unusual. That's really helpful.
I think sorry, Elizabeth, I was going to say that I think having worked on lots of public sector funded projects before, there is also sometimes a danger that you get led by the funder's priorities rather than your own.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a thought on that, but I think, Elizabeth, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just saying, I mean, this is really interesting in terms of just broadening out opportunities. Because at the moment I was just thinking in terms of like grants or possibly, trusts. So yeah, this is making it quite interesting.
I've run a session like this in Denbighshire. We actually had a commissioner who came to it. So for several of the social enterprise startups in the room, it made it for a really engaging conversation with, okay, so what in social services in particular, where were the opportunities? Is there a requirement for the local authority to have social enterprises in their supply chain? There's all sorts of questions going on around this. I mean, typically I would say, if you're trading and you can get income from commissioning, it gives you more control over what you want to do. And as Rachel said, if you're meeting the requirements of the funder, that isn't necessarily to the advantage of the mission that you're pursuing, because you've honed in on a particular problem and challenge. So really helpful grid. Do it as an exercise. I've given you so much homework, you may as well add this to it as well. Do it as an exercise to look at where you are now, fill in the box. So what is available at the moment? What grants are available? But do it as an aspiration thing. Where do you want to be in a year's time? Can you, get going with grant funding? But who do you need to talk to in the local authority if there's a possibility of income from commissioning? Or what do you need to put in place if you can generate income from trading in the longer term? Just something on stakeholders. I mean, literally, I'm going to show you a diagram. It's another thing, at the start of a business journey, to map out, working out who are your key stakeholders, whether that's we would include employees, potentially other directors, volunteers, local authority, Welsh Government, etc., etc. I'll send you this as a template. This is a good thing to sit down and work out your principal stakeholders and what you know about them. It's a bit like a knowing your customers exercise. What do they value? So if it's a funder, what do they value? What do you know? What do you think you know? And then what do you need to find out? So it's filling in that knowledge gap of understanding who are the key people who could say no to your business or yes to your business. and then working out the priorities for what you need to do to address that. So, Elizabeth, for you, a key stakeholder will be the health board. A key stakeholder will be GPs. That they seem to be critical to what you want to do, and so knowing what they value and what you think they value. You'd be tied in knots by the end of this, thinking, what do I think I know, but I don't really know, sort of thing. But you could run a whole session on just on this of mapping this out and working out who the key people really are. Time is against me. Let me move on. I'm going to flag up some important questions. I think if you're starting a business, typically people are asked, this is what Ilona said earlier, is it a good idea? How do you know? Have you tested it? Will people buy from you? Can you grow your income from it? Is it scalable? For a social business, there are different questions to ask that are really important. Actually, all businesses should ask this. Will this idea improve or damage people's mental health? What will it do for yours? Will it reduce poverty, or is it going to increase it? Will it include others? So I'll send these questions on. I think they're really important to sit down and work through your answers to. And the same for planet. Is your idea going to fix or harm the climate? And how do you know? How are we going to measure all of that? I'll send those on. That's the reflect part for where your business goes. It's been my voice mainly, but Tom is one of the business advisors for the New Start project. Tom, can you talk us through the support that we offer?
Absolutely, Matt. If you could just move through the slides as I'm speaking. Yeah. So Serena and I on the call are social business advisors for the Wales New Start project. Part of the reason why we were asking you earlier what kind of areas you were in to see where you would qualify possibly from the support eligible from us. It's funded by the European Regional Development Fund. It's up to 3 years, and we pretty much cover all of Wales. There are different projects between West Wales, North Wales and the Valleys with East Wales. But, if you're interested in starting a social enterprise in those areas, please get in touch with us. You flick to the next slide, please, Mart. So what you get one of the support from our regional business advisors. I cover Swansea, Carmarthenshire, and Neathport Talbot. Serena then covers Pembrokeshire and Ceredigion. And you literally get the full shebang, for the want of a better word. You have business support from the inception. So looking at your idea, what your vision is, what your mission statement is, how does it summarize what you do, through business planning. Thanks, Martin. Moving on to it. We support you with the appropriate legal structure. So I know some of you mentioned a community interest company. We do a bit of a governance questionnaire with you on that to see if that fits into what you're trying to achieve. We pay for your incorporation and do that for you online. We can provide directors training for your board of directors once you've recruited them, and then also help you develop sort of can you move away from solely working together, and that's a key eligibility criteria for coming onto the Social Business Wales programme.
Great, and we're 2 minutes over, but that's the kind of the end of the formal part of the webinar. If I just stop sharing a sec. What we can do now, we've allowed up to half an hour extra. So the reason I've asked Serena and Tom to come on board for this session is because they're working directly one-to-one with people at the ideas and startup stage. So there's an opportunity to ask kind of more pertinent and direct questions to them. We don't have to fill the whole half hour. I understand if you need to go, but you've got that option there as well. And I guess it's good to ask, any reflections from you, or perhaps the key thing is, what are your next steps that you need to take to move things forward?
I haven't done a advanced search yet, because I think what I need to do first is put all of my ideas in the form of a business plan, which I haven't quite got to. It's all in my head and on envelopes so far, but I need to put something formal on paper to to get it all straight for myself as much as for anybody else, really.
I think with sorry guys, my dog. The joys of working from home. I think with that, Rachel, we've got a basic business plan template that you could follow. So if you do have your kind of idea and your vision set in stone, just apply. Your local business advisor would probably say not quite there, and they might give you the tools to help with that. So they could send a basic business template through for you to complete if it help get your ideas down onto paper.
Great.
Apologies for my dogs there.
No, don't worry. Mine's asleep.
I was just wondering whether well, from your list of like applying, I was just not sure whether I'm there yet. So it's a question of how do I get to where I can apply, or is it possible to have some mentoring first, to help me? So that's what I'm not too clear on.
Absolutely. I can send the link through to you, Elizabeth, to apply. We do have a small budget for mentoring from different people in different areas. We are looking at doing a group mentoring webinar for those interested in sort of low waste and sustainable food options. Apologies, guys, the joys of working from home. I think with your business as well, just being from knowing you fall into my area with business advisor, I think if you put a lot of it onto a piece of paper, you apply, I think you find that the ideas will start to form together. And I think you might be a bit further along than you anticipate in terms of with the eligibility criteria.
Ilona, how about you? Do you come across any groups or individuals who are looking to start a social business?
I mean, I am part of the communities team. It's, I'm sort of I'm more responsible for the volunteering side of things. It's been fascinating to see all the initiatives that have sprung up during lockdown, and certainly in the area that I'm familiar with. There's been lots of things just come off the ground because there was a need and people have just jumped in and filled the gap. So for me personally, that's been very, very encouraging to see that if there is a need, that there will always be people who will just jump in and get things done, whether they're an extension of initiatives that were already in place or whether they're sort of new initiatives. I think, people, like I've said before, people are really quite keen to help out in a variety of ways. Just the one thing I would say with regards to, the whole sort of webinar, I know social enterprising does need to make money, and you know it's not sustainable in the long run if nobody makes an income out of it. I think it's quite useful to see that there are more and more ways of evidencing the sort of softer outcomes. Like I've worked on a number of projects, and theory of change has come up with a project I did with Sport Wales, for example, and it was sort of researched into theories of change and evaluated for its value for money and all those sort of things. Unless you can evidence the softer outcomes, which in my opinion are as valuable as the monetary outcomes, but just more difficult to prove. So if somebody changes the way they they manage their life, for example, with one of the I think it was Elizabeth saying, if you manage a condition like type 2 diabetes, in the long run, that is going to save a lot of money. So it might not generate a lot of money, but it just depends whether you put it in the balance of, input and outcomes. I think it should be. I think, things that improve people's well-being and generate a saving to a lot of other services that they don't have to access, be it health or social services, that should all be taken into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with you. And I worked on a project working with people who were long-term unemployed. And so as part of evaluating that, we kind of used questionnaires for people as they got involved in a self-reliant group. And then we had staged sessions in terms of 6 months, 12 months to find out what had changed. And we looked at a number of sort of soft outcomes with that, and they're really important. They're really important to people, and it's finding the right tools to be able to measure that. It might be worth, I know we touched on funding and the fact that a lot of funding has been diverted as emergency funds because of the period we're in. Serena and Tom, I wonder, the clients that you've been working with who've looked for funding, I wonder if you can give any comments on some of the things that's out there at the moment and approaches to going for funding.
Serena, do you want to go on this, or are you happy for me to carry on?
Yeah, sorry, I was just struggling to unmute myself then. Yeah, no, fine. I think it is tough times at the moment, and the most obvious funds around are going to be the ones that are relating to COVID-19 recovery, which I'm sure everyone's been keeping a close eye on. Each county has very individual funds and grants, etc., that are bespoke to their county. So it's always going to be a case of trying to do that little bit of research into what is available into the area that you're planning to work in. What is available in Pembrokeshire could be very different to what's available in Carmarthenshire or Swansea. So make those links with people like ourselves who are covering certain areas, but also the voluntary services organisations such as PABS in Pembrokeshire, I think it's CAVO in Carmarthenshire, what's the one in the SCVS in Swansea? Is that right, Tom?
Yeah, so in Swansea it's SCVS and Neath Talvas at NPT CVS.
Carry on, yeah.
Exactly what you were saying, Serena. They will have funding bulletins. I know in Swansea the CVS have regular funding bulletins, and you'll see stuff coming out like the Coastal Communities Fund for the National Lottery. You will see other small funds as well. If you need £2,000 here or £1,000 there from other random charities that will come out. So it's just trying to subscribe and search everywhere you can, I think, as well.
Yeah, I put a couple of links on as everyone was chatting about Funding Cymru, which is the kind of central portal if you are searching for the kind of grant funding opportunities. Yeah, and just keeping yourselves signed up to newsletters through ourselves and the CBCs and WCVA, any other organisation, to find out what the latest is, because these funds come and go all the time and have different timescales, different eligibility criteria, and it's a little bit of a minefield. I think we very much focus on, as an organisation ourselves, on we see the need for grant funding and seed funding and startup funding, and but we concentrate more on the trading elements of what you're trying to do, to find ways that you can trade sustainably as a social enterprise.
I think that's key of it as well. If you look at sort of the WCVA, they push a lot at the moment in terms of part loan, part grants for social enterprise. I know we said a lot about focusing more on the outcomes, but I think, what you'll find with a lot of these funders as well is if you can create sort of jobs, those loans will turn into more grants. So it's just looking at ways appropriate, really.
Worth bearing in mind as well, there's a lot of grant providers will, it's about the organisation they're going to fund. And so you need to look at what you need to have in place to make that happen. So have you got a board? Who's on the board? Your governance structure, all those sorts of things. So maybe Serena and Tom could comment on that in just a moment. But I'll say as well that I put the link to Unlimited. So that's the Foundation for Social Entrepreneurs. So that's about funding for individuals. And they have, we talked about funders having criteria areas. Working with an aging population is one of them. And employability is another. So, if your idea and your venture fit within that, then you can apply for anything from £500 to up to 5,000, and then 15,000 for a growing social business. But they will be interested in you as the individual, and it's a mixture of a kind of a cash award, but also training and support and a peer network. So I used to work for them. So yeah, I want to flag that up. That's another thing to look at. I know it's from this autumn on that they'll reopen the funds for general applications because they've had to divert it towards supporting people they've already been helping. Just going back to that issue of governance and funding applications, Serena, any kind of advice you can give on that?
Yeah, I think we've touched on it during the webinar, that obviously there is the issue of your legal structure that backs up how you're going to operate as a social business, which then allows you access, obviously, to the kind of social funders that are out there. So there is a range and a spectrum of legal structures available to the social enterprise sector. I think we've mentioned KICS, but that's just the starting point. And to find out more information about what is the most suitable legal structure for your organisation is going to be quite crucial for how you move forward, because there's lots of different pros and cons, and it's not a one fits all. So finding out more information about that, we have some really useful guides that gives you some great bedtime reading on finding out some background information. But literally you need to talk to an advisor like us or somebody else to help you select which is going to be the most appropriate legal structure for you, to enable you to access the social funds that may be out there, but also to enable you to trade in the way that you want to move forward. So that's one crucial aspect. The other would be about your governance. Social enterprise is all about social ownership, and we know that it is a real issue for us because we have some key individuals within the social enterprise sector who are driving forward social enterprises, but it's quite a task for them to then suddenly open up that element of control and everything into a bit more of a social ownership type structure, where you're adding other people to the business and hopefully finding a team of people to work with that are going to have common goals and you know, going to be able to work together to make sort of effective decisions for your social and community benefit. So that's my little points for the moment.
Thanks, Serena. We've got some really good examples of, you know, people who had a vision to found a social enterprise, and then they've built a really good team of people around them. So, I mean, one of the things that we can offer is, you know, tapping into that kind of knowledge and helping, you know, well, who do I choose to be on a board, and that sort of thing. So all that kind of support is there from us. I should say as well, Ben, thank you so much. Ben is, you know, everything technical, Ben has looked after and managed and organised. And I know he's like the silent partner. You might be wondering, who is this guy? But you know, thank you, Ben, for all your work on this. You've been absolutely crucial. Rachel's asked the question about the transcript of the chat. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine. I don't know what it froze about 10 minutes ago. So I don't know who else has froze, and I don't know if the chat is appearing for everybody, but mine has disappeared. So up until the thing about the dogs that Tom puts up there, I've got nothing there. So it hopefully will be available to download. We'll see. But my whole system froze halfway through your talking, and I haven't got any more of the chat. Can anybody else confirm whether they've got any of the chat?
Yeah, it did. When it froze and came back again, the chat had cleared. Now that should have auto saved with Martin.
Yeah.
But normally I've got the option of saving it this end, but I don't have it today. So
no, I'll take what we've got from here, and if we can get everything else, and I'll send it through to the group.
Thank you.
I've got it all. So
you've got it all, fab.
Give us, yeah. Yeah, not a well chosen phrase there, was it? All right, okay, I won't dig a hole. We can save it all, I'm sure, as long as you follow instructions. Good. Any other questions or any other things you want to discuss at the moment? Or are we all chatted out? Okay, Ben, could you do us a favour? Because we've got a session next week. I know, Elizabeth, you've booked onto it, I think, already, which is the catch-up cuppa for people who are at the start of the journey with social enterprise. And you'd be very welcome to kind of join us on that. So it's a Zoom call. It's online networking meeting. There are two options with it. There's a daytime option on the 28th and an early evening option on the 29th. So yeah, do have a look at that. You're more than welcome to join in and to meet some other social business entrepreneurs as well.
It should be a great session. We've already had 2 sets of 2, so and they're proving quite popular. Martin, just can you save the chat manually before we come off the call as well? That'd be great.
Yes. Okay. I'll
just in case we don't get it back, I'd like to send it.
All right. Excellent. Okay. Well, if there's nothing further, what we'll do is we'll send out an email with the transcript, if we can manage that, with the links, with the slides, and I'm happy to send over the other resources and links to them. But yeah, just to say thank you ever so much for joining the call. Hope it was useful for you. That bit about learning, reflecting, connecting, that's at the heart of it all. So do make use of all the resources. I love social businesses. I love what they're about. I love the people who start them and have the vision to make a change. So absolutely all power to you in the steps you take to make that happen. When you're at the idea stage, I think it's daunting because you're trying to build something that exists fundamentally only in your head at the moment. But just kind of press on with that vision, connect with the right people, tap into the resources that are available, and make social change happen as a result of it. So you're the right people to take forward the kind of economy that we need. I managed to make the hair stand up on my own back of my own neck. I don't know if that cri de coeur was good for you, but I really mean it. These are the businesses that we need. We needed it before COVID. We definitely need it after COVID. And that story that Ilona said about communities getting together. You know, that's been, in what has been a difficult time, a remarkable thing to see communities draw together. So all power to you, is what I'd say. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's been very interesting.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Brilliant. Okay, I think it's customary to all wave goodbye and then we press the red button.
Good luck, everybody. Hope to see you again.
Have a good day.
Bye for now.
Bye all. Take care.
Ta-ra. Thank you.